The market is so bad right now. Anyway, let's talk about UX interviews, and today we'll start with app critiques. So let's go. I have a couple of suggestions. It's gonna be a quick video. You always should start. I'm just looking at my notes. You always should start with a preamble. Set the context. If someone says, "Hey, can you critique Airbnb?" Spend some time talking about the company. Just set the stage, and which also means that as a designer, you should be a little bit aware about the companies in general, the landscape, the CEOs, the designers, who's leading the company in terms of the design voice, the problem they're solving. Has it changed over the years? How's the competitive landscape? I think it's good to know that kind of information. So set the stage starting with the company. The second thing you should do is let them know that you'll be speaking with two voices: voice of the customer, the user as you use, and then the voice of a product owner. As a designer, you have to always underscore each of your comments. Say, if I were to do it, I would do it differently, and this is how I would do it. It's really important, and I think it's almost 25-75. 25% is observation, and 75% of the the action in this round is your perspective, your hot take. Please do not hesitate to share your opinion, and have a little bit of a spine. Say, no, this is how I would approach this problem, and I would talk to teams, talk to research, I would talk to data, and this is what I would try to uncover. This carries a lot of weightage. So with the preamble out of the way, you should dive in. And when you dive in, please have a structure. Think of these themes like, start with first impressions and then talk about personalization, monetization, navigation, typography. I'm gonna put the list here, and you can look at that structure and just try practicing this across different apps. Without a structure, there's a big risk of you rabbit holing into this one small detail. Because the thing is with interviews, even though the interviewer might just, lean back and have you run the show, it's really on you to make sure that you impress them by packing a punch. Just cover as much breadth as possible instead of just because as designers, it's a bit of a blessing and also a curse that we can dive so deep into these details that we sometimes tend to get lost. So make sure that you bring yourself out of that and just hyper focus on hitting each of these areas. Make sure your sentences are short. Keep it brief. Like when I see a lot of the app critique mock interviews online, there's tremendous amount of there's a lot of words, and it gets really exhausting as a listener. So keep it super brief, please. Also, guys, make sure that you have a few good examples in your back pocket for each of the themes. Great example for navigation, great example for typography and branding, monetization, personalization. What happens is when you are doing your voiceover and you can bring in these examples, you just come across as someone that's been observant. For instance, you're critiquing Airbnb app, and you can say, it seems a bit cold. The landing page doesn't really have any flavor of personalization. A good example that comes to my mind is Netflix. They did this experiment back in 2018 where they changed the thumbnails based on the user's genre preference. And they actually did that where Netflix, they would take an action movie, but if you watched a lot of romance on Netflix, they would have the thumbnail be a romantic scene from that action movie. And it turned out to have a much greater conversion onto the details page. So sneak some of these examples in, and along with the examples, also have a few very strong opinions but loosely held, and package them in your own style. For instance, design systems. Go beyond just making a very shallow observation. The fact that the app has a design system, it's 2024, most apps do. Notice if the execution is constraining some of the possible creativity of the app. And you could say something like, design systems are not really, the boundaries. They're just the starting point. They're supposed to be a guardrail and not a prison. So see if you can find some of those observations as you're playing with the app. So bring in some freshness that's not out there. Do not just say, "Oh, this is a delightful experience that customers would like." Just say something a little unique. Have a voice. Okay, what's next? Just gonna look at my notes. And every app, or at least most of the apps, there's a feed component, and have some take on feed. For instance, I just came up with this where when I see feeds, I see two different types of feeds. There's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 for me is feeds which have these components that themselves are the currencies of the app. With TikTok and Instagram, the post on the feed is the product. But in a few cases, with like Amazon shopping, you're looking at a feed or search results, a listing where you have to click open to buy the product. So that's type 2. So just have a commentary on this when you look at a feed, and then share your perspective. And I think if you can deliver a couple of really solid business insights, then you buy yourself time to talk a lot more about the visual design stuff, and vice versa. I think having this contrast gives you, and see, all of this is for a slightly senior designer interview, I would say. If you're kind of new and if you're junior, then I think you can get away without any of the business/product insights. But if you ask me personally, even as a junior designer, you should. It's inseparable. You have to have an opinion and build this muscle over the years of analyzing an app and think about the business model. It just seems like a no-brainer to me. I learned it the hard way. I learned it really slow. So if I could just go back, that would be the one thing that I would do. So with that, I have to go. So peace.